Welcome to Magnify Your Message. Inspiration magnified.
I think reading for women sometimes is about getting lost. It's about escape from whatever might be difficult or challenging. What I am proposing is that I want reading for women to be where to get found.
All right, everyone, you're in for a real treat today. Our guest, Mara Purl, is an absolute powerhouse in the world of storytelling. She's the brilliant mind behind the best-selling Milford Haven novels, a small-town fiction series that's captured hearts around the globe. To the tune of 4.5 million listeners of her BBC radio drama, Milford Haven, USA. Her writing credits stretch from cover stories for Rolling Stone to scripts for Guiding Light, and she's racked up an incredible 75 book awards along the way. Mara's creative journey is nothing short of amazing, and I cannot wait for you to hear her story. Let's dive in. You are about to be taken on a journey that will be so entertaining and so captivating through the hands of our guest today, Mara Purl. I am thrilled to introduce you to everyone. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Cheryl, it is my honor, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
I have to say that I had long been a fan and a reader of your book series, and I'd been on your email list for quite some time. I mean, over a
Who
decade.
knew?
So
Oh my goodness.
when we started working together, I thought, "Oh my goodness, I don't know if I've ever worked with someone with whom I have such familiarity." So it's just truly a delight and an honor.
Well,
So
I've been a fan of yours just about as long. Isn't that interesting? Never imagining that we would meet and we would have a chance to work together. Oh, how wonderful. I love the world.
what a treat. So share with everyone. I know I've just revealed my hand slightly by talking about your book series, but who are you? What do you provide? Who do you serve?
I am a novelist and I write women's fiction. I write the Milford Haven novels, which are set in a little fictional town in a real place in California's beautiful Central Coast.
Oh, it's it- even the way you speak is melodic and alluring, captivating, pulling. I find myself drawn in just to your speaking voice. Oh my goodness, it pales in comparison to your extraordinary writing. You're just the full package. How on earth did you come by your work? How did you start this?
I feel like that wonderful Steve Martin movie when he says, I was born, you know.
Yes, right.
But I have since childhood been a writer and a performer. As a matter of fact, I thought the hearth in front of the fireplace was a stage. And so I figured one should do a show every night, shouldn't one? Doesn't everyone? So I would write a show, and my parents would roll their eyes and say, well, Mara wants to do a show. And so I would perform my little play. When my sister came along, I started thrusting pages at her. Can you read yet? I have a part for you. So in my career, I have worked in the theater and worked on television. I was a journalist, a script writer, and now a novelist.
So it started very young. It's interesting how there are those who say, "Oh, I've known my entire life." It's a conversation my sister and I have had for decades because she said, I think you came out of the womb knowing what you wanted to do. And she said, I still wonder. Now she's got a long established career as a coach, but it's a funny conversation that we've had over time. Did your sister, was she clear, or were you the only one who knew from childhood exactly what you were born to do?
Oh, I think Linda knew too. And she started performing very early and has never stopped, still has a fabulous acting career. Yeah,
It's
it's funny. Some
amazing.
people are on a journey to find what that is. Some people, I think, are more on a journey to give what they have. Both paths are wonderful and both have their challenges.
It brings up the age-old nature versus nurture conversation, doesn't
It
it? Like,
does,
how
yes.
does one arrive at that? So, wow, it's it's amazing that you've known since you were such a young girl. So, inside of all of it, the playwriting, the journalism, the being a novelist now, being in, working in Hollywood, what was the gift at the heart of it that you wanted to provide for people?
I'm not sure that I knew for a long time. But now I would say, in a nutshell, I want women to feel valued and understood. I want them to suddenly feel as though they have advocates that they didn't know about, friends they didn't know they had. And this is to the reading world that I am, publishing into and speaking into. So I think reading for women sometimes is about getting lost. It's about escape from whatever might be difficult or challenging. And of course, there's nothing wrong with escape. But I would say the problem is when you come back from reading that book, nothing in your own life has changed. So, what I am proposing is that I want reading for women to be where to get found, so that it's an invitation for them to find their core message and find that they even have a core message and that it's valuable, that they have a niche that nobody else can fill.
Wow. Both are so valuable at different times. And both getting lost and getting found. Getting found, I've never even heard that term. You should TM that immediately, by the way. It's so absolutely brilliant. I heard a story of a fellow who started a trademarking company, and he had watched, oh, what was Show Me the Money? Uh, Cuba Gooding Jr. I oh, what was that movie with Tom Cruise? Was that and Renee Zellweger? I suddenly can't think of that. You had me at hello. There were so many trademarkable lines in that, but
It was
Show Me the
I
Money
know
was
what
one of
film you
them.
mean. It was great.
And I suddenly can't think of the name. It's going to haunt me. And I'm sure at 3 a.m. invariably I will wake up and be like, what? And I remember the name of the guy who does the Jerry Maguire. Goodness gracious.
There it
So,
is.
okay, it was in Jerry Maguire, the man who left during the movie. He heard the line, "Show me the money," and he knew how to do trademarks. His name is Haig Fisher. He left the movie, said, "I've got to go trademark this," did, and won the trademark. Then
Wow.
he opened a company that does trademarks. I later had found him, not through any of that story, and done a few first trademarks through him. But it came to me as you were saying, get found as opposed to
Oh,
just get lost. That's such a brilliant term. It just evokes a whole world. But back to what you were saying, fiction as a way to lose oneself or find oneself. It is that whole notion of being found through reading. Say more about that. It's just so fascinating. It's not something that's commonly spoken about.
I think women's fiction is an intimate experience. Perhaps all reading is, because it's you and the book, and you are bringing all the visuals generated by the words that you're reading. But I think for women, there's this sense of nobody knows how tough it is for me in the workplace. Uh, Nobody ever told me that I was going to be valuable in ways other than being a wife, being a mother. And don't you know, here comes that conversation again in our culture, it just hugely. Um, and so you go to kind of a secret place to read something. And if in that reading you go, you know, here's a woman who's a nurse. Wow, she has a tough job. It's maybe as tough as the job I have. Or here's someone who's starting her own company. Is that even possible? You know, you find companionship, you find a template, you find models that you say, even though this is just fiction, it's written so well, it's so realistic and believable that I'm taking heart from this. And then women who read women's fiction tend to gather themselves sort of spontaneously into book clubs.
Mm.
And then they use the books to instigate these fantastic conversations. So much so that in the backs of my books and many other books in my genre, we have topics for discussion because we know these topics are going to be discussed. And so we have a little encouragement. They don't really need us to tell them what to discuss, but it's fun to say, we're listening, you know, we know that you're going to enjoy this, and here's something to get started while you know, pour your cappuccino or your glass of wine and sit with your women friends and really get into it, really get into what matters in your life. So it's an incredible world. I have learned from people in these book clubs. I sometimes get invited. You know, they'll ask me, it's like, well, let's ask the author. And so either in person or on Zoom, I'll meet with people, and we get into it. It's rich.
What an opportunity all around. I mean, to hear firsthand from such fans of your work and for them, it's what a focus group, what an opportunity to really hear what's working just beyond mere sales. But then for them, God, what an honor and a
In
delight
fact, you
to
know,
hear
there's
from
one
you.
book that I wrote because of a book club. This wonderful group, once a year, three book clubs in the Central Coast get together and they invite one author. And one year they invited me, and they had read, all of them had read at least one book, and they had a cute clubhouse. And so we started talking, and they asked questions. Why did my character ever move to Milford Haven, my fictional town, in the first place? And I knew all the answers, but I realized, but I haven't written that part of the story. So I wrote a prequel and I dedicated it to them.
Oh, they must have just been over the moon.
Well, it was very valuable to me,
Yes.
you know, to realize that was missing. And I pinned down things that might have been a little amorphous and got clearer about character and character development. I mean, it's a like a girlfriend conversation, um, doing this work. It's just
Mm.
too much fun.
I don't share about this normally, but it's so relevant to this conversation. After being kidnapped, I read, and what I mean was I felt so ruined by what had happened. I felt that I don't know if it was just all the years of going to church with my grandmother, where they talked about being sullied and soiled and ruined. But now that all these things were in fact true, I was no longer, pristine and clean and virginal and all that. And there was also the fact that I had been so idiotic and had trusted these men and thought that I was going to be safe or I could figure it out, and that I was stupid enough to think that they would actually make me a model. And there were so many reasons that I felt broken and damaged. And I didn't want to get close to anyone lest they whiff that on me somehow. I thought that if I said anything or grew close to anyone, they would inevitably find this thing out. And so I needed to be distant, and reading books was the perfect way. It wasn't, you weren't seen as horribly antisocial, just engrossed in the pages of a book. And all I did was read, but I have long thought that I was simply keeping people at bay and losing myself. But as you're speaking this, I realize that there's this element, this gorgeous element of being found. One of the books that I was given, that was left at, I became a model anyway, and there was at one of these models housings was Letters to a Young Poet.
Oh, Rainer Maria Rilke.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And there's a line that I will probably bastardize, which said, not to not be obsessing on the questions. Don't worry about, excuse me, don't worry about the answers now, but just ruminate on the questions, live only the questions. And I thought, I am asking myself the wrong questions. I must find better questions to ask myself, ruminate on better questions, live those questions. But Mara, only through your brilliance did I realize that that became the whole, frankly, skeleton upon which I built a life. Thank you for
A
that.
pathway toward redemption, a
True.
pathway toward restoration. So the restoration was always present. There was never really anything wrong with you. It just, the light had to be shined in the right place. And authors occupy this strange, interesting place in the universe. I think we sort of throw ourselves out there into the realm of possibility, and then we report back on what we've seen. And so people like Rilke, who's just a luminous soul, what he saw, he was able to bring to us like this beautiful gift that I bet has uplifted many, many thousands of readers. And I'm so grateful that it reached you.
Thank you, Mara. And thank you for the lens through which I could see that. But I see that that's this, as you speak about the gift that authors bring, it is a new lens through which one can view life.
That's exactly how I see it. It's a powerful magnifying lens, and you train it on some aspect of life, and you get something that you needed to get. I think, I don't know, the theme of writing continues to reveal itself for me. And one of the themes is disentangling our snarls.
Ooh,
So you're going along in life, and then here's this big knot, and you have to say, is this the time to jump over it, walk around it, pretend it ain't there? Or is this the time to face it and untie the knots? And my characters all have different responses to this. My protagonist is generally morally courageous, and she'll go for it, she'll tackle it. She has a dear friend 20 years older who passed it by many years ago and now is circling back and having to face it. So, somewhere in the story, you find an example
mm,
of those who postpone, ignore, deny, and those who embrace. And of course, what are you really finding? You're finding yourself somewhere in there. well, what did I do? Or what am I doing? Am I facing what I need to face, or am I pretending it's not important? And these are little invitations that occur in the stories. So, on the surface, and you can just read it for, well, what happens? Just read it for the plot, and that's fine. But if you want to read a little deeper, you can start hearing these questions and seeing if they resonate for you. And hopefully, sometimes you get on a second reading, you get more. I mean, those are the kind of books I like that, okay, now I know the basic plot structure, but there was more to that, and I want to know what. And you read it again and you go, oh, wow, I missed this the first time.
This is so wonderful. It seems I used to think of it as being, I don't know, somewhat indulgent perhaps to reread a book, even closed-minded to something new, but there's such value in it, as you're explaining. There really is a far deeper cut. Isn't that wonderful? Yes. And it's so easy to imagine or even discount fiction as simply being for the entertainment value. But
Well,
as
it
you're
is
speaking
that,
about it,
and I think that when you write fiction, that is part of your job. I am supposed to entertain my readers, um, but I have some author friends who don't like this much. But I feel nonfiction is about facts, and fiction is about truth.
this is so profound. Mara, wow, that's really incredible.
Because unencumbered by some of the facts, let's say, in a given scenario, if you're looking for the truth, it's just deeper. It just is. And you need that super lens that fiction can bring that goes deeply into, I mean, when I say depth, I'm talking about motive. I'm talking about baggage that a character brings forward from whatever has happened before. How free are they? Are they trying to be free? Are they trying to get free of something? Are they trying to live someone else's expectation rather than their own? And so we're complex, we humans. And so if you, as a writer, if you let yourself listen for all that, then these things will tiptoe into the story for you.
Mm. You can hear the author that you are tiptoe into the story. It's just so beautiful. The- I- If you think about all that's being provided, just like you'd said early on in our conversation about the fact that it is such an intimate act to read a book, and it's such an individual, unique experience that we're having on our own. And then these great truths are being dropped along the way. They're tiptoeing into the story, as it were. What an opportunity for transformation.
Which is why we do what we do. That's the whole thing. The If a reader can say to me, "Gosh, I never saw it that way before,"
Mm.
or just has a fresh insight, well, then the world transforms for them. And that's what I'm up to. That's what I hope for people. I sometimes also consult other authors, and again, it's the same work. It's I think if an author gets that tap on the shoulder, then yep, they're supposed to write. And if I can help them in that journey, whatever part of the journey, I love to do that because they are there for transformation, but then the work that they hope to do is there to transform others.
What a gift to provide. All three, it's a win-win-win. You for prospective authors or authors who want to dive deeper, the author in the cathartic experience of giving that away, and then the audience to reap the benefits of that transformation. What a gift. So with even with all your success, and I know you haven't said it, but it should be said, with your series, you have this huge BBC success with millions of listeners, 4.5 million listeners. Even with all your success in your illustrious career, you still how our paths crossed this time was you want to get an even bigger audience to serve at an even larger scale so you can provide that transformation. What is it that you want to provide now?
Transformation one person at a time is perhaps the ultimate thrill. But I'm not quite sure I would live long enough to do much if that were the only way to get a message out there. And so to backtrack for a moment, I had this unusual hit. Uh, I was on the air with my little tiny radio drama in a little tiny town, which was really a thrill. But then the BBC got interested. That was just extraordinary. So we went from 4.5 listeners in the US, to 4.5 million listeners in the UK. So that was absolutely exciting, daunting. We were going to be up against the best radio dramas in the English language. So we were huddled in Los Angeles, like 1 minute jumping up and down and 1 minute biting our nails. And then I got a call from the manager of Radio 5 on the BBC, and she said, "You might like to pop over. It's doing rather well." And I said, "What does rather well?" And she said, 4.5 million listeners. So I did a press tour. I was on all the talk shows. I was in the Sunday Times, the London Times, it was a whirlwind. But at the same time, it's a bit of a one-off. And so there are these myths about media, which you figured out way before I did. The myth is you do one major show and you're a media darling. And I suppose the other myth is that when you get a media shot, it's going to be all about you. Well, not so much. So see if you agree with this, Cheryl. I sort of boil it down to 3 ways to get major media. First, you do something unusual. Well, for example, I was on a Greenpeace voyage. We traveled 6,000 miles in the North Pacific. We put our lives at risk. We saved whales. And this got me on the Today Show. Well, that was fabulous. But, they had no reason to have me back. Not even when I wrote a best-selling book that included elements of that voyage, right? It's still of no interest. That was interesting. So then the second way is to do a clever, gimmicky, now known as clickbait. So I'm on a book tour a few years ago in the Western US, had a fantastic PR team. They pitched me to the local ABC affiliate. They said, nah, not interested. Then they wrote a new headline, which was Mara Purl suffers from gown deficiency. Well, they booked me immediately.
To figure out what in the Dickens is
What is
gown
that,
deficiency.
right? And so I get on the show and they say, by the way, what is a gown deficiency? Well, I was performing on Days of Our Lives and I played a nurse. So I always had to wear the white uniform and the green scrubs, and the rest of the women were in gowns. So I had a gown deficiency.
Yes.
They're absolutely so clever, you know, and I did get on the show and I did get to talk about my books. But once again, they really had no reason to have me back. But the thing is, my career is ongoing and my books are ongoing and the message that I want to deliver is ongoing and honestly getting better as I go along because I'm learning. So then the third way to try to actually get on media is it's not about blowing your own horn, it's about being of service. And I didn't make that connection. I mean, here I am, I'm thinking only about how to be of service to my readers, but I didn't connect the dots to, oh, that's what you want to do in media. And you're the one who connected those dots for me. And it's such an ongoing, fantastic aha. It's not just one lesson. It's it circles back to the very beginning about what I'm up to, which is I want women to be valued. Guess what? I had to learn to value myself. It's just fascinating. Stuff you thought you knew, but you didn't really know.
If you weren't already oriented around being of service, I assert that it wouldn't have resonated with you because
Probably not. Yeah.
there are so many people who come to us who, well, I don't want to learn anything. I just want to walk into a TV appearance and say my stuff. I want to just go talk about my business. I'm like, good luck with that because there are infomercials for that, but there's not, if you don't learn that you can't do that for one thing, you you'll never, they'll pull the plug before the segment ever airs. You won't even get the segment, but if somehow you were able to dupe them, it's not the way it works, and it's such a delight and a joy to have you be so incredibly coachable, already so successful, already so proven, already with this incredible track record and pedigree and all of this, and still be open to learning. They broke the mold, Mara.
Well, I mean, this is the joy of life is learning. You know, when I was, I guess I must have been in my 20s, I got to hear Buckminster Fuller speak. And, you know, Bucky was somebody who he would stand on stage and describe the discovery of the geodesic dome, the discovery of the power and strength within a triangle. And he had a, is it an erector set? No, it was a game thing where it had
Jerry
sticks.
Maguire, I'm teasing.
Yeah, right. It was Jerry Maguire.
Trying to
But he
come up with
had
the name.
this sort of toy and he would assemble it in front of the audience and then he'd wear it like a necklace and wear it like a hat and jump around on stage. And it, of course, that joy was contagious. And the sense of what was the joy about, that joy of discovery. And he was in his 90s at this point. Um, you know, so that was one of my mentors, I would say, even though I had only a few minutes with him in this public setting, it just like, oh, I get it. I get that. That's the path. That's where we want to be, no matter the age. And you know, in our culture today, there are some things not to admire, but maybe the thing to admire is that really that service has become much more important. It's kind of wonderful that the media is not going to kowtow to somebody being famous for being famous, that we have to really be up to something. We want to further the conversation, a phrase that you often use, which is great, great guidance.
I mean, there's plenty of examples of those who are famous for being famous, and the dichotomy today is that there are those in such abundance, but everyone that's oriented around being of service needs to, I in order to do something lasting, it's gotta be about something other than whatever being famous for being famous is. And they're so antithetical, aren't they? They're truly 180 degrees apart, providing nothing or providing everything and living your life in service so that your work, your life, your raison d'etre is fully to provide service. Wow, Mara, that was brilliant. Thank you.
I mean, you know, it's a journey. I was just thinking again about women's fiction. Um, so women in the workplace, every career that women enter and have entered has its its obstacles and challenges. And this is by no means is this all about denigrating men. I love men. I'm married to a fantastic man. I have male friends who I would do anything for. So this isn't about male bashing. It's about acknowledging this sisterhood. There are things that we come up against that we shouldn't have to. Um, so, for example, years ago, I wrote scripts, I wrote series treatments, I wrote, various things for television. And I would take a meeting, and there would be all kinds of excitement about the idea. And, you go home with a pat on the back and a sense of, okay, something's going to come from this. And then about a week later, my agent would call and explain that the producer had called and, oh, gee, they found something in their files that was just like the idea that I had pitched. So therefore, they really didn't have to buy anything from me. 6 months would go by and I would see my show on the air.
Oh
So this
my.
happened a few times that my ideas were stolen. And what could I do about it? I didn't have the budget to sue. Besides, if I had tried to sue, I would get a reputation for being difficult to work with.
Right.
I was a nobody.
Mm.
So, but nobody is a nobody. So I got an invitation to write something for the radio. Well, nobody was paying attention to the radio, not for drama. And so I thought, I'm going to take this opportunity. So that's one thing to think about for all of us, right? And it was Joseph Campbell who said this. He said, when you find your path, you won't necessarily hear a big gong. It can be a small voice, it can be a small opportunity, but it might just be the opening of the path for you. And I had worked for Joe in his theater in New York. He and his wife had a theater called The Open Eye, absolutely brilliant. And so when this lovely gentleman who owned a tiny radio station in the tiny town, and he said, ever want to do something for radio? I heard that in a different
Mm.
way because of what Joe had advised. And
Yes.
so I said, yes. So, who knew that it was going to open up to a
Mm.
successful local show and then a successful international show, which in turn drew the attention of publishers. But that's the thing I would say to anyone, and maybe especially any author, because authors are in my community, and that is when you hear something that feels like a little opportunity, don't just turn away from it because it might be unfamiliar. Consider accepting that challenge and see how you can grow.
Thank you for pulling it all back around to being of service. That is such a beautiful nugget to leave people with. an opportunity to really listen to life differently, a distinct way to listen from how are my opportunities presenting themselves to me uniquely from how they might present themselves to anyone else.
Yeah,
Thank you for
because,
that.
you have a special gift, and the intention of the universe is that you give that gift.
Amen. Mara, how can people find out more about you?
Everything is on my website, and it's Mara, Mara Purl, Purl.
And we will
And
have that listed in the
thank you.
liner notes of the episode. What would you like to leave people with today?
We've already talked about transformation, and it's a little bit different from change, right? So, change for the sake of change isn't necessarily valuable. I'm going to wear this pair of shoes, I'm going to wear that pair of shoes. Transformation, though, is that lens we talked about where you can see things differently. If you can see them differently, then you can help others see it differently.
Boy, doesn't it sound as though every problem facing this world today could be solved by just being willing to try on someone else's lens, their perspective or point of view, and see things differently other than just through our own limited, finite lens. Thank you for that gift. Thank you for the gift of your presence and your
Thank you
heart.
for all the gifts that you give, and thank you for being in my life.
I'm such a fan. Thank you, Laura.
And I am too. Thank you, Cheryl.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Magnify Your Message. Wow, what an incredible conversation with Mara Purl. Her passion for storytelling and her journey through so many creative realms is truly inspiring. To learn more about Mara, just click the links in the episode notes. I'm Cheryl Hunter, and this is Magnify Your Message. Join us next time. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with everyone that you feel it would benefit. Thank you in advance. And when you're ready to share your story and your work with the world, I can help. Visit CherylHunter.com to learn how. I am Cheryl Hunter, and until next time, know that your message has the power to change the world.